Welcome to episode 10 of the In the Name of Service podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. Here we broadcast stories of everyday men and women who've answered a call to serve in hopes of inspiring and catalyzing the rest of us to follow suit in our own way. Today's interview is with Michelle Lang. Michelle is a military spouse, mother of 3, and founder of Veteran Help Point, a nonprofit building a fluid and intuitive database for veterans and their families who need resources but don't know where or how to find them. In today's conversation, Michelle takes us through her own story, highlighting some of the painful experiences that fueled her fire to support others today. Specifically, Michelle speaks about the difficulties she and her husband faced during his military service, as well as during a break in his service. How frustrating and hopeless it can be in the role of a military spouse, and how she had to first humble herself, let go of pride and ego, and get help before she could be of help to her husband. If you've ever been discouraged by trying to support someone when you have no idea what's going on in their head, or have been confused by sudden avalanches of emotion, as Michelle describes, this episode is for you. It can be difficult being a military spouse for several reasons, like unknown future assignments and deployments, difficulties getting plugged into new friend circles, finding work that is meaningful to you, or raising kids by yourself while your spouse is training or deployed. Michelle has dealt with all of these things and more, yet she says today that the military has actually made her family stronger, that her marriage gets stronger as they go through all of the challenges they face together. Michelle is selfless, strong, and stubborn. Her husband, Chris, may be the one in the military, but Michelle is a fighter. I hope this conversation encourages you today that no matter what battle you're facing, there are people who want to come alongside and fight with you. For more information on Veteran Help Point and specific volunteer opportunities available, like resource discovery, database management, social media management, or marketing and branding, or to reach out to Michelle directly, please take a look at the show notes. Thank you for listening. Okay, Michelle, thank you so much for being here with me today on the In the Name of Service podcast. Start us off by telling us your background and your story.
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Lang. I have been a military spouse for about, 7 years now. I've already lost track of the anniversaries. Yeah. It's military marriages, I think, are like dog years. So it's
totally.
Like 7 years for everyone. So I think we're coming up on 7 years. But yeah, I have a bachelor's of science in sports management with exercise science. And I didn't use that for maybe more than a couple months whenever I graduated college before I hit the road to move in with my boyfriend at the time, my now husband. And I always kind of felt like I had a lot to give, and I felt like my talents were being wasted. And then, like a lot of military spouses, just kind of couldn't find my work. And to me, work is meaning, because I've been working since I was 14. So I'm a worker. And all of that led me to here where I am now. And maybe I shouldn't say that I'm a worker, because now I work a little bit too hard, I think.
Yeah. Well, what initially, so you and your husband were dating then? Was he already in the military, or what led you guys into that military life initially?
Yeah. So he is from the town that I went to college in. So, that would be like me. We say I married a townie, and that's like something that you don't want to do. But I married a townie. And so he was home for block leave, and I met him in a really seedy bar, one of two in the town.
Lovely.
And we kind of just like did everything together for those 2 weeks, and then just dated long distance. And then I decided at the time I was working at our local hospital as a community health and wellness coordinator. I quit that job and I was living in Pennsylvania, and I moved up to New York with him. He was at Fort Drum.
Okay. What stands out? I mean, you've been on this journey for at least 7 years that we know of. What stands out as having been the most meaningful experience so far in you and your husband's journey through this military service?
I don't know if it's just one experience, but it's the getting stronger as we go through the different challenges that we have to face. So whenever we were in the beginning of our marriage, I was 24, 25, and he's 4 years older than me. So we were both, younger, a little bit less mature. I was always an independent person, but I found myself alone without a support system, so I relied on him heavily. And whenever he would go away for schools or training or whatever, I could handle myself, but I really wasn't secure with myself. Yeah. And the more we go through those trainings and those schools, and now, here we are with 3 kids, and I'm navigating him going to school while I'm home with 3 kids. 7 years ago, I would have never been able to imagine that. But every time we have to go through one of these hurdles, we make it an effort to check in with each other more, to try and see what needs need to be met with each other, even from a distance, and then come back together. So we've done a really, really great job progressing in our relationship, and that's because we've had to work really, really hard to do that these past couple years. So really, it's just the military lifestyle, I think, that has made our marriage so strong.
Right. Yeah. And isn't that interesting, Michelle? Because some people right now, maybe even listening to you right now, are thinking about it in the opposite direction, and thinking the military is killing my family. So it's so encouraging to hear your story behind that. Well, tell us about your husband's initial transition out of the military and the history of Veteran Help Point.
Sure. So in 2019, we were down at Fort Benning, and he was going through captain's career course. And at that point, he was infantry. He wanted to switch out of infantry. It wasn't happening. And the options were either at that time, it was us 2 and our son, who was a couple months old. It was either take us out to Fort Irwin, California, in the middle of the desert.
Wow.
And we wanted to start our family. Like, we wanted to have a kid. But, I really wouldn't see him for 3 years during that time, as he would be a company commander. I would rarely see him. That's just not how we would want to raise a family. We had very intentional ideas of how we wanted to raise our children. And he knew he would be very, very miserable. It would make me very miserable. So he chose to leave the military and walk away. That was really, really difficult for him, because he had dedicated his life to the Army. That's all he ever wanted to do. He just wanted to serve. So for him to make that choice, that was already, kind of like a chip on his shoulder. But he had about, I think, like 3 or 4 months to kind of transition out. And I mean, looking back now, I recommend people start thinking about their transition a year and a half, a year out. So he had a very little amount of time to do it, but he did everything that he thought he was supposed to do, as far as going through TAPS, having a plan A, B, and C. He even got a CDL license, because he's like, if I can't get a job, at least I can drive truck, take care of my family.
Yeah.
He ended up getting a job back in Pennsylvania, and that's great. That's where we're both from. So I thought, oh, cool. We'll both have support systems finally. We've never had that. And whenever we got to Pennsylvania, it was just like an avalanche of emotion, really. It happened so quickly. It happened and I can remember the weekend it just like happened. I had just found out that I was pregnant with our second son, and at that point already, he and I weren't speaking to each other.
Wow.
And I remember being so terrified to even tell him that I was pregnant because the outlook of life at that point was just the most unfamiliar territory I've ever been in. You know, like with the military, you always think, whatever, we'll figure it out. Like, you just roll with it. You just figure it out because no one knows what they're doing. Who knows what the military, who knows what the Army's going to say, if they're going to cancel your orders, whatever. You just go with it. You can figure it out.
You get so used to...
Did not know how to figure this out.
Right. What do you think was different about it, Michelle?
He was like a fish out of water. He had never spent time being a civilian. He never spent time thinking about what that would look like, what that would feel like. Now we're in a town that's not a military town. Yeah. There's no one around us to relate to. There's no familiarity. For me, I adjusted better because I'm not in that world. You know, military spouses are always 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So I could adjust, and I had no idea what was going through his mind. It's just all of a sudden he just had, it was like he was just stripped of his honor, his service, everything. And he felt, you know, clueless and embarrassed and grieving his service. Right. And those are all things that I didn't understand. I didn't understand it at all. And it caused a really, really big strain on our marriage. You know, I tried to find the resources that he needed, and I couldn't find the resources that he needed. It wasn't just a simple Google search, even though we lived in a pretty big city outside of Philadelphia. And not only that, but the VA had denied him care. And so that was kind of like a real kick in the gut to him, because he's like, well, what else am I supposed to do? Right. You know, whenever you go through the system and you're told, go to the VA, they'll help you. And then they say, no, sorry, you can't be helped. It totally shuts you down, shuts your mind down. It's not something you prepared for. It's not like going through, you know, a school where you know you're going to finish it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. This is your life. Right. And it was scary. And it brought us to the lowest point in our marriage. We couldn't get along. We couldn't even talk to each other as roommates. You know, I was pretty sure we were going to get a divorce, or, you know, I was going to come home one day and he was going to be, you know, dead in our house. And that's what I had to figure out how to work through in our life. And that's not a point where I want anybody else to have to go through that. So that's kind of why, you know, I'm here.
What was the turning point for you, Michelle?
I put myself in therapy because I knew that the only thing that I could change was myself. You cannot help somebody else. Really, you can't. They have to want to be helped. I was not the person that could help him because we were not seeing even the same side of an issue. I mean, it was just, we were in totally different books, not even in the same chapter. You know what I mean? So I had to help myself, and I had to figure out how I can be what I needed to be for myself and for my son, and what he needed for me to be, because I'm a very independent person. I'm a very stubborn person. My stubbornness is what got us here, because I didn't give up. I think absolutely. For a lot of people, I said, you know, God made me stubborn, and that's why I'm here, because I had to fight like hell to get to where we are and to save our marriage and to save him. And not everybody is that stubborn. Right. It's so true. Yeah.
So tell us about the change then. You decide, no, I'm not giving up. And not only am I not giving up on this, but this is a gap that I want to try to fill so that no one else falls in this hole.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I had to humble myself in a lot of ways. So whenever you're in that type of situation, you really have to let go of pride and let go of ego. And what I had to say to myself was, how can I be a better person to meet Chris where he's at? So what do I need to do to meet him? And that was really humbling for me. And whenever I did that, then we started to come together, and we came together in therapy. Then, taking a step further, when I let go of pride and started talking to other people, they opened up to me that they shared some of the same struggles too, of finding resources and just not knowing how to navigate the outside. Right. And that at that time was something that wasn't talked about. And I'm just like, okay, I need to be a bit of a brave voice right now and allow people to have these conversations with me and talk freely. It was just like a small social media platform, Instagram, but I'm telling people like, hey, I'm struggling. I struggled. Right. And a lot of people related to that. And I got a lot of messages, from people saying like, I feel the same way. I felt the same way. And I thought, this has to change. We've got to do better.
So how did you begin to build what you thought could fill that gap?
So when my husband, he ended up getting back into the Army Reserve full time. So after
I'm
all
going
that
home.
We went through, he decided civilian life was not for him after all of that. And it landed us down here at Fort Bragg. So whenever we got down here, and he was deployed for about a year. Finally, after we mended our fence there, he got deployed for a year. And I had a lot of time to think. That's a lot of time to think.
That's a long deployment.
And yeah, it was super long during COVID too. And it was just like everything was up in the air. So I thought there has to be like a database that's easier to use, that can be living, breathing, changing, evolving as these nonprofits and businesses do, so people can get in touch with one another and the help that they need. Because I'm from a really, really rural area in Pennsylvania. So even if somebody wanted help, like you're going to Harrisburg, and that's 2 hours away, or you're going to West Virginia, Maryland, like you're driving, wherever you're going over a mountain. So even if you wanted to get help, how are you going to get help? How are you going to even know what's out there? Because thinking about making that journey, you better know what's on the other side of that mountain, and you better know that person's going to help you, right?
Right.
So we moved down here to Fort Bragg, and I was like, this is the place to do it, because this is, a military community. There's a lot of resources here. So we can just build it, and I'll figure it out. So that's how I started. I'll just figure it out as I go.
Yeah. So tell us about Veteran Help Point and where you're at now and where you see it going.
So Veteran Help Point is a database of local resources based on 10 categories of help. And the categories are primary care, physical therapy, holistic therapy, mental health, financial aid and literacy, legal, benefits, job assistance, housing, and fitness. That's what we've limited to right now, specifically geared towards veterans. But the site itself is going to be intuitive enough where if you're a military spouse, if you're a veteran spouse, family member, caregiver, you're going to be able to navigate that site and know what you're looking for and find what you hope to find. Because for me, as a military spouse, I spent so much of this marriage like blinded to the military. I didn't want to know what's going on. I don't want to learn your jargon. I don't want to learn any of that. So then whenever I got into, needing to find help, I really had a hard time looking for things because I don't know what these words, it's like a different language.
Right. It is.
I don't want it to be like that. How can you find help? A lot of the times it's going to be somebody else that's finding the resources for them, because, people want to help. So we're making it very intuitive, and we're starting with the Southeast region right now to kind of break it up into a chunk at a time. Eventually, it'll be a national database, and eventually it'll grow from there as far as the different types of people it will help and how they can receive help, whether it's through phone call, things like that. Because sometimes even navigating a database, you do need a little bit of help, no matter how intuitive it is. But
Sure.
It requires constant vetting of the resources. And I mean, it really is just like a living document. It's constantly being changed.
Right.
To stay up to date.
I know that so many people have dealt with this and had to solve this problem in their own way, on their own time and on their own dime. What are some of the needs that Veteran Help Point has right now? How can people, if they want to contribute or come alongside, or even if they're a provider and they want it to be listed, how can they best do that right now?
Right now, we're in the middle of switching our website over. So we're still on the one that I built, which is not high key. It's not great. But I have a great web developer, and she's working with me. So when that switches over, there's going to be an easy form where if you're a provider or if you're a nonprofit, you can fill it out.
Okay.
It'll be sent to me, and I can reach out, vet it further, and then easily list it on the database.
Okay.
And there's also going to be a volunteer form where if you're interested in volunteering, you just fill it out, and then I'll reach out to you.
Awesome. What would volunteering look like, do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for volunteering in a nonprofit startup because it takes a lot of work. And the fun thing about nonprofits is they typically have a lifespan of 1 year. Okay.
Wow.
But to be eligible for a lot of grants, you need to show that you've hung on for like 2 to 3 years. Yeah. So those 3 years are so crucial, and it's just a grind. So as far as, finding resources and vetting resources, the great thing I think about these opportunities is that it can all be done remotely. So you don't have to, wake up at 7 a.m. and hand out bottles of water at a 5K or whatever. You can do this work remotely from your phone, and that looks like, hunting for resources per state. And I can walk people through how to do that, and a little system that I've developed. Database management for anybody that is a spreadsheet nerd.
Yeah.
My husband's a total spreadsheet nerd, but he helps me whenever he can, whenever he's not wrangling the kids for me. Vetting the resources, resource relations, and then of course we have marketing and social media and all the other fun things that go along with business. So there's the nitty gritty of it, and then there's what some people would call fun. I don't call like web development fun, because it's not fun for me. But I have met people that think that's fun. So
absolutely,
we have a lot of fun opportunities if that's up your alley.
That sounds great. All of those sound awesome. Well, in building this, Michelle, what has sacrifice looked like for you and your family as you go on this journey? I mean, typically, if you're going to serve in some area, you have to give up in others.
It has been a very difficult challenge for me to understand how to balance being a mom, being a wife, and a business owner. I've had a lot of ups and downs with that, especially my kids are 4, 2, and 6 months.
They're so tiny.
So they take a lot of work right now. And this is, the crucial time where I'm shaping them and I'm molding them to be, good humans. And sometimes I don't put that first, and I put the business first. And then I kick myself because I'm like, what am I doing? I'm getting irritated with kids that are just being kids. Or, it's a very interesting dynamic. I've had to learn to give myself a lot of grace. Yes. I've had to learn how to time. I've had to redefine like what time management is to me, honestly, because, you know, if you are focused on one thing for an hour, you can get it done. And then you can find yourself getting 2 or 3 things done in that hour. And then you can move on with your day. Like, I am such a workaholic where if I have a to-do list that's a mile long, like, I want to get it done, get it done, get it done.
Right.
So I've had to learn how to slow down and be present with my kids and be present with the business. And then somewhere in there, find time to be present with my husband.
How do you stay motivated to do this? I hear the daily struggle. I know so many of us can relate to you on that piece.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times where it's just like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like, it's just never going to get done. Or, you know, it's very easy whenever you're starting something like this to feel totally overwhelmed and let it swallow you.
Right.
But then it's whenever I'm, you know, helping, because I help people one-on-one right now too.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm helping them and just showing people empathy in a way that they haven't been shown that before. It's just the little things that keep me going, and, you know, reaching out, networking with other people that are like very interested in what I'm doing and wish that they would have had this whenever they transitioned out makes me remember the struggle that I went through and what I don't want other people to go through.
Yeah.
So it ebbs and flows, but it's people that help me keep going.
Yeah. What would you say the reward of service is? What does that look like for you right now?
That's a tough one because I'm very, very hard on myself. And I'm one of those people where, like, you know, nothing is ever good enough. If I'm doing it, it's never going to be good enough. That's the type of person I am. And I'm working actively to shed that mindset, but it's very embedded in me. But connecting people with the right resources and eliminating some of that mental frustration and mental load for them is super rewarding. And it really is so simple to connect with somebody, understand what they need, understand what they've been doing. And I'm not an expert in military transitions. I'm not an expert in housing or job assistance or anything like that, but I guarantee you, I can connect you with an expert.
Yes.
And that's where the disconnect is. And that talking to somebody and just hearing the burden that's been lifted from them.
Yes.
Like with hope, and they have been pointed in the right direction now, finally, is really, really encouraging. And those are the small wins that I like to celebrate for myself.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. And I know because of how hard you are on yourself that this, while it seems really ambitious and big, and it is bigger than you, or it wouldn't be motivating, I know it's going to be a great thing. What advice do you have for other people who maybe feel some kind of conviction to serve, or they see a gap that needs to be filled, but they do not know like where or how to get started?
My recommendation, and I wish that I would have done this first, is get involved with a nonprofit and see how it works. You'll eliminate a lot of struggles for yourself if you want to start a nonprofit, because that's a whole other episode. But my suggestion is finding, it doesn't even have to be a nonprofit, but I guarantee you can, you know, find one that's hurting for volunteers.
Yes.
Find a nonprofit that you resonate with, you love their mission, you're passionate about it, and reach out to them, because you will learn how things work. You will learn how to not do things. You'll learn how to do things, and you'll learn if it's really right for you, because you can walk away from a volunteer position. Yeah, it's a lot harder to walk away from, you know, a nonprofit that you're building than just, you know, not show up to a volunteer one day.
Yeah. So just get some experience. Just get out there. You don't know what kind of experience is waiting for you on the other end. And it may end up shaping and kind of pivoting you in a direction that you didn't even anticipate. As we get out, I think we learn more and more when we put ourselves out there about kind of what our unique giftings are and how those might be used in the world as we build those relationships, which is really what you're saying. Awesome. That's great advice. Well, Michelle, do you have anything else you'd like to add about Veteran Help Point, or just any message you'd like to put out before we end this episode?
We are in the process very much of growing right now, and definitely need volunteers who are willing to, take an hour a week, 2 hours a week, and do whatever makes them happy. And doing that, you are going to be serving veterans. We're already serving veterans, and we're already helping their families. So this is a really great opportunity for you to know that you're doing something instead of just, giving money to something and trusting that they're doing something with it. You have a direct impact doing this.
Yeah.
And our door is open to you.
I love it. I love it. Open doors, folks. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Michelle. Thank you for everything that you're doing, everything you've built with Veteran Help Point. And I am so encouraged that this is going to be essentially a lifeline for people, that they know, hey, if I can just get to this site or, talk to someone there, then I can be directed in some kind of positive path. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I loved it.